Right. Thank you for having us. I would like to start with saying a few words about in relation to my positionality, in an effort to contribute to the decolonization of knowledge in the virtual exchange space in particular. I'm a white female academic. I've lived and worked in Germany, the UK, and in the US. My area of expertise is virtual exchange that originates in the learning and teaching of languages and cultures, but is now a practice quite common, particularly since the pandemic, across the curriculum. But I have only recently started to systematically unpick some of the assumptions underlined in the discourses around educational technologies and their uses. And virtual exchange is one of those cases. So this just in terms of a bit of background knowledge about myself. I'm going to start this presentation, then Roberto, with whom I've worked in the context of the VAMOS project, an EU Erasmus Plus funded virtual exchange project, will take over. Madson, unfortunately, cannot be with us because he is recovering from COVID. Now, these are our talking points. We are going to start with virtual exchange. We're going to move on to critical virtual exchange. The VAMOS project, we don't want to say what it was about, but we also have a concrete example to illustrate critical virtual exchange. And then we are going to wrap up with some thoughts on what the implications for research and practice in this space are. Okay, so virtual exchange. Pedagogically structured online collaborative learning between groups of students from different cultural contexts and geographical locations. So what does it mean? We have normally 2, sometimes 3, sometimes even 4 educators, different higher education institutions in different countries in the world, who bring their student cohorts together for collaborative online project work. It combines the deep impact of intercultural dialogue with the broad reach of digital technology, and it originates, I've already mentioned it, in the learning and teaching of languages and cultures. And it has been hailed, particularly during and now also after the pandemic, as an experiential learning opportunity, not only in languages, but in all subject areas. It is also seen as a strong catalyst in advancing the internationalization of higher education curricula, also known as internationalization at home. It can prepare for, it can deepen, it can extend, or it can even emulate physical exchanges. It can certainly complement physical exchanges. Let's not forget that only a minority of students, for a variety of reasons, financial reasons very often, can go and study abroad. It has also been reported in the literature that virtual exchange prepares students for the globalized digital workplace, and that it promotes the development of transversal skills, empathy, curiosity, problem solving, conflict transformation, teamwork, media information literacy. And these skills feature high on the agenda of businesses and organizations who are currently confronted with an environment that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous as a result of COVID-19, for at least another decade. But there is a big but. Even within virtual exchange, there are inequalities. Virtual exchange practices are often still electives that are only available to some students. And virtual exchange-based internationalization at home is not inherently equitable and inclusive. In fact, it can reproduce or perpetuate existing exclusion. It can create new digital inequalities. And we have seen this during the pandemic. And the existing digital divides have been exacerbated. And it is prone to Western hegemonies and any other form of online and blended learning. Exchanges can be influenced by the teaching partners' academic positions, so the two educators bringing their student cohorts together, by the linguistic competence of the teaching partners, linguistic competence of their students. There's an issue with the hegemony of English. There are challenges associated with access to and experience in the use of technology. I've just mentioned them. There can be institutional constraints, so that there is a lack of support or a lack of acknowledgement and a lack of rewards for the educators who engage in virtual exchange initiatives. There can be challenges related to gender, to race, to age, and also geopolitical issues. And there continues to be an underestimation of the political and the social dimension of technology use, and a lack of awareness of the power dynamics created by educational practices, including virtual exchange. That's often reflective in the prioritization of certain knowledges and the reinforcement of social and epistemic injustices. That's why, as O'Dowd and Balin in 2021 conclude, we need yet to find out more about how processes of inclusion and exclusion play out in virtual settings. Now, two colleagues of mine from the Stevens Initiative in the US have started to look at VE through the equality, diversity and inclusion lens. They say that institutions must seek equitable partnerships with partners from all demographics, including minority-serving institutions and institutions in countries where the main language of instruction is not English. And that institutional leadership needs to prioritize the creation of resources and training and support for exchange implementers who, that is the teachers, who in turn need to prioritize activities that explore social justice topics as part of the exchange dialogue among the students. The exchanges need to serve all participating communities rather than the community of the leading exchange partner. Common issues need to be found, and all topics, exchange topics, need to be customized to reflect the local realities of the participating students. And last but not least, we need to be very careful in our technology choices to ensure equitable access during the implementation of an exchange. I see virtual exchange, critical virtual exchange, the way I have framed it, as an instantiation of critical global citizenship education, the way Andreotti defines it, with notions of power, voice, and difference at its core, and that requires critical engagement, reflexivity, unlearning, relearning. I see critical virtual exchange as a vehicle for action, for public engagement, for socio-political change, as it addresses social justice and inclusion challenges, both at institutional and individual level. And I propose the following framework for critical virtual exchange. There are 4 pillars to it: the systematic use of low bandwidth technologies and reflexive use of technologies in our work, exchanges that specifically target student populations that are traditionally underrepresented in study abroad or internationalization at home programs. We are talking about students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Systematic alignment of virtual exchange project outcomes with United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the inclusion, where possible, of local outreach activities, so where the students, as part of their exchange activity, are in contact with local businesses, with local charities, with NGOs, with non-profit organizations, as part of the VE projects they are involved in their cross-cultural working teams. And I've recently started to talk about a fifth pillar, because my background is, after all, in the learning and teaching of languages and cultures originally. I also have started to promote trans-languaging approaches in virtual exchange initiatives. I'm not talking about code switching. I'm talking about trans-languaging, which is the use of all meaning-making, of all semiotic resources that we have at our disposition when we work online in technology-mediated contexts, in particular, to make meaning and to communicate during a virtual exchange. So not just the spoken and written word, also visual language, oral input, and any combination of the above. Now, what does it look like when all of this comes together? And this is where I hand over to Roberto, whom I have met in the context of the VAMOS project. Roberto, take it away.
Thank you, Mirjam. Thank you for your words. Good morning from Brazil. Good afternoon for you in England. It's a pleasure to join you in this forum. So I'm Professor Roberto Guerra from the Federal University of Pernambuco. I'm speaking from the northeast of Brazil, and we talk about the VAMS project a little bit. This is a project co-founded by the Erasmus Plus call for capacity building for higher education. The project was developed by bringing together internationalization and sustainability as the core subjects and challenges for all the universities that joined the project. We wanted to build the capacity for innovative international collaboration and joint learning to discuss how the education for sustainable development and the virtual exchange could be able and productive to solve some issues and problems in our universities, addressing the wicked problems and the transformative teaching and learning practices. So the VAMS project was built up with different universities from 5 different countries. And in Latin America, we had Brazil and Honduras. In Europe, we had Sweden, Spain, and the unique collaboration with teachers located in different countries. So we had this intercultural, international approach to join efforts together and to promote different pilot courses with teachers from different backgrounds, students from different areas, and with different theoretical subjects to put together and came up with a solution. So the project was structured in different work packages. Some of them were very administrative, and these three listed in this slide were connected directly with the thematic of the project. So we had a training for the trainers, for the teachers, when we learned how to implement new methods, new approaches, like the ones Mirjam talked to you. We had a very rich and powerful training with the uni collaboration teachers. We had another package about the virtual teacher and course development, and the last one to the implementation of the pilot courses. So talking about a concrete example, we had more than 8 different pilot courses, and I can add here later a link to our publication where you can find more detailed information about the different pilot courses. But here I'm going to talk about the one I was coordinating with my friends and colleagues from the Federal University of Pernambuco, but also with friends and colleagues from Honduras and Sweden. We were 13 different teachers with different backgrounds and expertise. And something that connected the three cities, the three countries, the three universities is the fact that we are located or near coastal areas. Here have some photos from Honduras, from Brazil, and from Sweden, where we have campuses and we have wicked problems to address and to put together students and teachers trying to find solutions. The learning goals of this pilot specifically was about to understand the connection between the global and local trends in tourism, the questions of networks and the trade networks formed to implement this kind of solutions, the evaluation of the impact of social impact, economic, environmental impact in a cross-cultural perspective. Students would be able to suggest and formulate tourism initiatives that could be able to promote positive environmental, social, and economic effects, engage social responsibility and ecological awareness as part of a citizenship, and at least to promote individual commitment with the SDGs from the United Nations, goals for sustainable development. So, how we did it? The course was formed to strengthen students' transcultural and interlinguistic skills. So, as Mirjam presented to us, this is a core aspect of the pilot and like a fundamental thing to keep in mind, and how we were training those students, how we're preparing the materials, choosing the references, and creating the tasks. So we had 32 hours distributed in 7 weeks, and during this period, we implemented a design thinking methodology with 27 students working in 3 different groups based on a problem-based learning. And those groups came up with a solution presented at the end of the pilot course as a pitch, where we could evaluate how innovative, how integrated, and how they could be able to join global and local issues to solve a problem related with tourism in a coastal area. Well, we used different technologies to implement the pilot. Keep in mind that we had students from different, very different economic and social backgrounds, like students in Sweden, Honduras, and Brazil. So we used tools that for Brazilian students, for example, they were very cheap to use in their personal devices, like the WhatsApp, for example. And we also use institutional tools like Moodle to make things happen. But we were able to listen to students and make a creative balance between those tools. Keep in mind that we need to make it possible for everyone. So the technological issues were very important to keep in mind, especially as a coordinator, because during pandemic, we in Brazil specifically, we discovered that our students, for most of them, a good internet at home isn't something taken for granted. So we have to keep in mind that these social differences were very high among students. And during the pandemic, we could be able to see how it is in the real life. So related to the UN SDG, we have 5 different SDGs addressed by the student solutions, the 3, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And the solutions came up, and the group came up with solutions that could address more than one SDG. It was something really cool to evaluate. So we have some benefits that we listed and could think about after the pilot and after the evaluation. For students, the intercultural international collaboration experience, the understanding of local context in the tourism in all the parts of the world, the development of interlinguistic skills, the understanding of sustainability and sustainable development, the understanding of the wicked problems linked to local communities, and the skills to manage tourism from a sustainable perspective. So this is very important for our students, especially because, as Vivian said, internationalization at home is for us as a institutional strategy to increase these opportunities. In our university, only 1% of our 30,000 students have family conditions to pay a traditional exchange experience abroad. So when we have this kind of programs, we are spreading the opportunities to engage more students in this kind of experience. For teachers, the perception of teaching conditions in different parts of the world, extended networks, learning about virtual exchange, sharing mutual experience, connections and networks, a self-reflective teaching, and approaches to critical pedagogy. For our institutions, we could join discussions with our senior management of our institutions, trying to push their engagement with the virtual exchange future. It's something new in the context of Latin America, but it's something really important and really strategic to increase our international programs and actions. Extended networks of collaboration, extending the internationalization strategy at home, a global dialogue with other universities, and so on. For everyone in our academic community, we have multiple benefits of this learning environment, like a constructive communication, the dialogue, impact, social impact, and interculturality. We addressed central themes in the current conditions that affect human life, like pollution, social inequities, and the problems posed after the impacts of the over-tourism, especially in coastal areas, and we increased the awareness of the UN SDGs. Mirjam, think for me it was the last one? Yes.
Yeah. If there are no questions yet, I want to say a few things about the takeaways from these experiences. There are implications for research and practice if we decide to continue the critical virtual exchange journey. I do think I've seen now in the context of the project and other virtual exchange work I've done over the last 20 years, that virtual exchange, critical virtual exchange in particular, has become an inclusive, sustainable, and a scalable internationalization at home strategy, and that it can instigate transformative change, not only at individual level, but also at institutional and policy level. What is most important for me, though, is that it will create, and already has created, new legacies in internationalization at home, based on an understanding of research as living knowledge, praxis knowledge that connects the lived experiences on the ground, the lived experiences of the students, of the educators, of the administrators, institutional administrators, project administrators, institutional decision makers, all those involved in critical virtual exchange. praxis knowledge, their praxis knowledge connected with the body of global critical knowledge in international and intercultural education and transversal skills building. It definitely enriches critical virtual exchange, enriches traditional virtual exchange and internationalization at home research, but it also affects real change globally through the virtual exchange projects the students are engaged in that focus on the UN SDGs and also involve a new model of employer and higher education collaborations. Not all virtual exchanges, not all critical virtual exchange have this local outreach dimension, but this is a potential that is starting to be more systematically explored by higher education institutions. What we know for sure, though, is that that virtual exchange and critical virtual exchange can enhance graduate employability, particularly employability of students from low socioeconomic backgrounds, through the international, intercultural, and transversal skills acquisition. That is something that you can put into your CV when you apply for a job, that you have participated in an international project with fellow students from around the world, that a project that has produced a concrete outcome. And with this, we say thank you. And here are our references.
Thank you very much, Mirjam and Roberto. Does anyone have any questions, reflections, anything they want to ask the speakers? Feel free to put your microphone and your cameras on if you prefer to ask it that way rather than in the chat. We have one hand up. Barbara?
Yeah, please.
Oh, hello. And thank you very much for the presentation. Very clear and detailed. So thank you very much for that. So I'm from Royal Holloway University in London, and we are very much interested in decolonizing the curriculum and things like that. And seeing that a large amount of UK students are from international students, this is a very important aspect when it comes to the reframing of knowledge and decolonizing knowledge. So this is a very key project, and hearing it from you is very refreshing. Now, what I wanted to check is, in your experience, or from what you have found, I know the countries that you've been looking at are not necessarily the British universities. And this is where my question is, how open do you think, or receptive to this idea do you think the UK universities are going to be, considering we have been in so much control of education?
There is a lot of virtual exchange and critical virtual exchange work going on in UK higher education institutions. Newcastle is a beacon, for example. Warwick, Southampton. There are many institutions in the UK who are also members of Uni Collaboration. Uni Collaboration, who was one of the project partners in the VAMOS project. I'm a founding member of Uni Collaboration. My academic home is the Open University. We are involved in virtual exchange right now with the Beijing Foreign Studies University in China. There is a lot of it already happening. It might not be that known yet to people outside internationalization. Normally, it is through the internationalization offices at the institutions and maybe individual educators who have heard about virtual exchange at conferences that virtual exchange then comes to the institution. But if you check, for example, you have in this side of the Atlantic, you have unicollaboration.org, and the organization I'm a founding member of. But you also have BRAVE in Brazil, Brazilian Virtual Exchange, an organization that brings institutions, higher education institutions that already do virtual exchange or who want to do virtual exchange together. So BRAVE in Brazil, I'm just putting it in the chat, unicollaboration.org. collaboration.org, this side of the Atlantic. Yeah, the United Nations Sustainability Goals are not measured, assessed by a regulated standardizing body. So how are you measuring success in meeting the SDGs? We are aligning. We don't make big claims. We are gesturing towards critical virtual exchange. We are aligning the topics, the content of the virtual exchange initiatives with the SDGs. So it's an alignment. And we are not so much in the business of measuring. We are not in the business of rubrics, if I may say so. Because if virtual exchange works well, what happens within the participants are ultimately not just maybe cognitive shifts, but also psychological and emotional shifts through the exchange experience. And we mustn't be surprised that often the first thing students say afterwards, you know what, I've actually learned more about myself through the interactions with the others. I've learned more about the topic. I've found out about the UN sustainability goals. I have found out how I can make even a small contribution to my virtual exchange or critical virtual exchange project work. We are making small claims. We are gesturing towards achieving goals. Roberto, you want to add anything? Sorry, I've just taken over answering the questions. I apologize.
No problem, Mirjam. Thank you. I just uploaded 2 different links in our chat. One to the Vamos publication, where we can find more in detailed information about the pilot courses, and the other one about from the FAUBI website, the Brazilian Organization of International Affairs Offices from our universities, where you can find more detailed information about the BRAVE program. So we had in the chat a question about the SDGs being addressed by our students. Well, in the first moment, we were teaching them, presenting them the logic about related to the UN 2030 agenda and the SDG aspect itself. So for some of them, it was some kind of a new topic or a cool topic, but not necessarily something structured, something concerned with the traditional classes, the traditional subjects. So for our surprise, in some courses, in some careers, the UN SDGs are not yet implemented or treated like a central or important issue. So we were concerned about how they understood the goal, how they could go deeper, understanding the possibilities and the specific aspects of each goal. And as we were related to coastal areas, of course, we had a small branch of how far we could go related to the goals. So at the end of the project, they were able to make connections and to understand that the life below water can be connected with a better conditions of work or with a more conscious work and consumption conditions. So this kind of connections, kind of complex thinking about the impact of our activities, of our projects, could be able to be presented at the end of the pilot. So it was something very special because in a small period, in a short period, sorry, we could be able to see how the students could be reflecting about themselves and about the realities surrounding them, and how they could be creative and innovative, promoting and came up with a solution that could join different goals in a project, trying to create concrete solutions to improve the life conditions in that regions.
Any other questions or comments? I think we've got time for one more.
You can also get in touch with us, you know, via email, and we'll share the slide deck anyway with you, Elodie, and then
Thank you.
But very often, you know, when you think about things a little later, you have questions that you don't have on the spot, and we are happy to engage with anybody who wants to engage with us.
Thank you for that. I had a question about, you said the VAMOS project was a pilot. Has that now come to an end, and what are the next steps that you've got planned?
Well, for our side at the Federal University of Pernambuco, we are now working with the same logic of collaborative work with our partner in Honduras. We're going to implement a full course between our university and the university in Honduras, focused on students in the high school, because our university has a high school inside of our structure. So we're going to spread this kind of experience not only for undergraduate students, but also with students in high school. So this is a new thing that we're working together. And we have also collaborations with our partners in Brazil, in the South region and in the North region, in the Amazon region. And we are working publications and the implementation of courses among our students. So this is something that we keep in work because we had this kind of strength connection during the project time.
That's actually important what you just said, Roberto. We see increasingly intercontinental exchanges, so to speak, where people work across, people particularly in countries like Brazil, where, you know, where you the far away from each other by default because of the fact that the country stretches so far. And that is another interesting development in virtual exchange. And that allows people to work in Portuguese, for example, in this context, or in Portuguese and Spanish if you work with partners from Honduras.
Yes, in Brazil, we have about 5 hours flying distance with each other. So for us, it's almost another country because we are in a very hot and dry area, and another part in the Amazon forest, and the other one in the south of Brazil, in a region more almost with the same weather like Argentina and Uruguay. So we have three different, very different regions here working together and trying to implement courses to spread the awareness of the UN SDGs with our students in civil engineering, in the business course, you know, in the courses connected with health, like pharmacology or nursery. So this is something we are working hard to implement.
Thank you. That's really interesting. If there aren't any other questions, then I think we could probably end here. Thank you both for your time today. It's been a really interesting experience to hear about your project and about this virtual exchange, which I had not come across before. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for attending. There are some more seminars and provocations coming up, so please check out the scheduling for that.
Thank you for having us. Thanks, Roberto,
Thank you very
for
much.
joining. And I wish you a lovely rest of the day, everybody.
Thank you, Mirjam. Thank you, everybody.